Good afternoon, everyone. I call to order the GCC regular board meeting, April the 20th, 2021, a little after 4:45. Roll call. Mr. Anderson, second.
Here.
Mr. Harry Block,
Here.
Mr. Bruce Mandrick. Bruce Mandrick, he's here. Okay, Mr. Turner, Jack
Here.
Turner. Lily Campbell, board president, present. All board members are present and accounted for. And we want to thank, first of all of our cabinet members, Dr. Peterson, Mr. Thornsberry, Mr. Sample, Dr. McCormick, our special director, Heather Gold. I hate to call Ann, of course, our executive assistant, Mr. Marco. Thank all of you for being here with us tonight, and those of you who are watching online. We appreciate everyone who's present, and thank you. And so with that, we will ask, do we have public comments for tonight?
Madam President, there's no public comment tonight.
No public comment tonight. Thank you. And we have no closed session. So we shall get ready to move right into our superintendent's update. And we're so glad to see you, Dr. Peterson. Thank you. And you're on.
Thank you. So thank you, Ms. Lily, our esteemed board president, and our esteemed board. It's an honor, as always, to be here leading with you, and want to affirm each and every one of you for the services you provide every day for our students and for our organization. We are a team, and we could not do it without you. So thank you for being here and giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I have a number of updates for you. One is I do want to build on what Ms. Lily Campbell just said about our esteemed support, our admin services, Ms. Melissa DeMarco, who is the board secretary as well as my secretary. Tomorrow, if you are not aware of it, is Administrative Professionals Day. And so while we will not be seeing you tomorrow, board, we will be seeing again another great day of support by Ms. Melissa DeMarco. We want to make sure the board is aware how much we recognize and support and affirm the work that she does for the board and for cabinet. So thank you, Ms. Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. And then we do have a whole bunch of things to update you on as usual. This morning, the cabinet and I had a meeting with Flippin Group, our longtime consultant partners, and we are once again under consideration to be a CKH National Showcase district for capturing kids' hearts. It was an honor to be able to represent you and the organization in that interview, and I'm sure we'll find out in the very near future what our status is. You will remember last year was the first time they created this status, and we were one of only 8 across the United States. So we're hopeful that we once again will be honored. We did find out this last week that all 9 of our Gateway Community Charter Schools are once again Capturing Kids' Hearts National Showcase schools, which is not a small endeavor, and it is the hard work of each of the principals, leadership teams, school site teams, just to continue to take that into their hands and make it real and deep and meaningful for the sake of our students and for each other. So we want to affirm each and every one of our campuses for their hard work in reaching CKH Showcase status. We also want to recognize one of our own. We understand, and I know Ms. Lily has shared with us about her retirement from AXA, but this last week, I don't know if you can see it with this wonderful thing about the way that this works, but it was in EdCal. She was front page with a picture about her retirement, and many people providing her with recognition and honor in support and affirming her great work across the years, not only for AXA, but for public education and leaders. So Ms. Lily, we at the GCC also want to affirm, while you are not retiring from the GCC, nor are you allowed, we recognize your retirement from AXA and your longtime service there. So congratulations on being honored and in EdCal this week. COVID-19, COVID-19, COVID-19. It'll be a beautiful world when I don't have to use those words any longer, but they will be on my update for a while, I'm sure. Sacramento County, as you may know, continues in the red status. Yolo County has moved into the orange status, both of these as of a few weeks ago, and neither one of them is moving towards the next tier, unfortunately. We do know that the governor had an announcement that made clear on June 15th, there aren't going to be any more tiers and colors, but the rest of the world, such as CDC and Cal OSHA and others, still have many things to tell us about what we can and cannot do, despite colors. So we will be monitoring all those ongoing changes for you. Of particular interest is Cal OSHA, and we're hoping for some change by June 15th in some of their requirements. But you will hear more about COVID-19 during the school updates study sessions. We being myself, with the support of Melissa and Dr. McCormick and Jason Sample, in creating them, we started our superintendent spring presentations. This last week we did EPIC and COA Middle School last Friday, and was quite an honor to once again be with our staff and talk about vision, mission, strategy, what matters, and affirm them for their great work. We have 2 more this week, 2 more the following Monday, and basically that's my life for a while. So we will get to all of those school sites eventually. We are wanting to update you on a number of future projects. All kinds of work has started on the 21-22 Blueprint for Excellence. I think this is our 4th year, 3rd year, 4th year. I don't know, one of those. 4th, okay, 4th year for the Blueprint for Excellence. And in the superintendent spring presentation, we created a survey and a way to get all that information easily through Google Docs, which Melissa is handling for me. And we expect to get some good input from the entire organization to include in our Blueprint for Excellence. I know that Jason is also working on including it in his work with CBAC and his work with the foundation. We will, of course, include it in our work with the principals group as well. And obviously, there will be a time for you to have your input into that document as well. Staff is currently hard at work along with the sites on, this is the year of 5, this is the year of 5 renewals coming up with Twin Rivers. And we recently had our annual oversight meetings with Twin Rivers. Francie Heim was the consultant that the district was using for that. At this point, very positive outcomes in our annual oversight visits. We still have another stage where Ms. Heim is going to come into some of our classrooms and or onto some of our campuses, and we're looking forward to completing that annual oversight. We also have, as I think I've discussed with you in the past, and it shows up in the blueprint, a couple of charters in development, and we are creating some new positions that will also help with that charter development. We'll keep you informed as they move along, and some of that includes an IB high school that's been in the blueprint for, I think, 3 years, and also some more work on how we're expanding our vocational programs to possibly site-based and project-based offerings. We also are working on the concept of a virtual academy to figure out how we want to help support our students who may not feel comfortable coming back into a classroom experience. And so that is in the initial embryonic stages, but we expect that to be open for next school year. This last Sunday, I had the wonderful opportunity to represent charter schools once again on the FCMAT board for our Sunday meeting. Can't ever understand why it has to be a Sunday meeting, but 4-hour Sunday meeting it was, and it was rich in information, and a lot of it around COVID and a lot of it around funding, of course, legislation and other things that will all become clear to you at some point as we delve them into some of what we're going to talk to you about today. Also want to recognize that I was able to be part of 2 incredibly important meetings. One was a meeting of EdSource where there was naming of their new director. Louis Friedberg, their current director, is leaving. They've been in a search process and they have not announced yet, so I can't tell you who they chose, but it's a wonderful person, and EdSource will go on to influence the world for education Unfortunately, I will not, because my term ends in June and I have been replaced by the esteemed Don Shelby, who has just a huge resume, including his work with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and being part of the initial work in starting the Aspire Charter Schools, which he works for today. So he will represent charters well in my absence, and that means I won't have to drive to Oakland on Fridays for meetings any longer.
Yeah.
There you go. So that's a nice change. Want to update you on a few facilities issues. You remember that our Sava campus on the Sim Center has been uprooted due to a fire and water damage in the Sim Center, which is a bit of a disappointment for us. We continue to work with the city regarding what options they have for our students. We will not be able to be in our large suite that we've housed for many, many years. We will not for sure be able to be in there for at least 2 years. They're giving us some other alternative space. It's limited. We're still searching options with the school for how we're going to move forward. Also, as we've previously shared with the board, we're continuing to expand our footprint at Sava Elk Grove so that we can have additional CTE space there. We expect we will be signing a letter of intent soon to allow for that to continue. And at that point, we'll bring a lease agreement to the board for agreeing to what that expanded instructional and vocational space looks like. It's a bit of a trade-off. One suite is going away and a different suite that's larger that allows for the instructional space will be coming in. Also updating you on the power in lease that you've previously discussed with us and that you've already approved for us to move forward on. We continue to negotiate. There's been some legal review and input, and we are finalizing that with some minor and immaterial changes, and the terms that we presented to the board remain unchanged. So we hope to be moving forward on that in the near future. Excited about our continued learning and professional development, which you know is a key part of who we are. Cabinet has had some team coaching with Lyle Kurtman. Individual cabinet members have had some individual coaching with Lyle Kurtman. That continues to be influential in our thinking and in our growth. We also, Lyle Kurtman and I, have completed 2 of 3 of our GCC teacher leader cohort sessions for this year, which we've had some great discussions about innovation and creativity. What did we birth in the pandemic that we can carry over into a face-to-face world? And really just want to affirm our teacher leaders from across the GCC. We have amazing teachers in the GCC, and they represent every day, and they're working very hard to do great things for our kids. We're continuing to do quite a bit around the idea of brain research, social emotional learning, and trauma-informed instruction. You may remember that Dr. McCormick shared with you the results of our social emotional learning survey that our staff took through Hanover. And one of the things they asked for was more trauma-informed instruction strategies and knowledge. So we're continuing to pursue this area. I know that Eric Crawford in our special education department is working on a trauma-informed instruction training for all staff that we hope to see in the near future. I've also embedded some of the brain research into my spring presentations as well. Crucial Conversations Cohort 23 is currently nearing the 2/3 mark. You know, we only have about 3 sessions left. And we are excited again about having this opportunity to impact the way that people communicate in our organization and in their world. Dr. McCormick and I finished our Leading Live Female book study since I last saw you. And I think it was about 20 of us, something like that, came together and did a lot of good learning around how to lead while female and what things inform that. So I want to affirm Dr. McCormick for that co-leadership. And then Mr. Sample and I finished the 4th session of 6 sessions for Leadership Development Academy in his passion project area of politics and leadership. So we were able to do that last week. We have 2 more regular sessions and 1 advanced session left of Leadership Development Academy for this year. We're excited about that. AXA, all the time. We had the Legislative Action Day this last week, and Jason Sample was Region 3's legislative analyst person who handled all that. So he deserves a standing ovation. He put together a great experience for all of Region 3 to impact legislation and outcomes on behalf of students. And it was a very well done experience by both Jason and AXA across the state. We continue, meaning I continue to attend weekly AXA Superintendent Council meetings every Thursday. And whenever they are offered legislative lunch breaks and other AXA offerings, all very informative. On April 5th, all of the GCC, every single staff member, participated in a staff development called implicit bias training. Staff that were not able to attend on the day it was offered will have the opportunity to participate in a makeup so that every single person will have watched the implicit bias training and participated by the time we're done. We're very excited about that. It was done in coordination with Nicole Anderson, who formerly worked with AXA and now has her own consulting organization as well. We continue to do our planning for our second year with the Hanover Research Group, and we're going to be planning how to go deeper on our equity journey, particularly around data in the coming year. You'll remember that we also included in that contract that it's needs to be focused on learning recovery, learning loss, social emotional learning, and math, which are some of our key priorities. So we're really keeping our key priorities tight with our work with Hanover. And then end of year events, we are going to have our end of year event on May 21. Mark your calendars, although I'm sure if she has not already, Miss Melissa will send you a Outlook meeting request for that, May 21st at 1:30. I know that you would like to be in person eating hamburgers and hot dogs with us, but we will not be doing it in person this year. COVID, 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 more COVID. But we will be making it fun and exciting and as interactive as we can. And we're continuing to find ways to make connections and belongingness in our virtual setting. The schools have all created a very succinct calendar of their graduation and promotion events. While some degree of those will be in person, they are very much focused on only having a very narrow attendance of primarily students and very, very few outside people and only under and following CDC and Cal OSHA and every other public health entity's guidelines, of which I have told you there are many. And so we are going to be monitoring them carefully. We are going to be expecting a high level of compliance because we take this role seriously. But all of these events, to the best of our ability, will be live streamed through YouTube, I understand, Mr. Sample. And so while we cannot invite you to physically be a part of them, we will be sharing with you a way that you can participate digitally and virtually. So that will be coming to you when we have it all figured out. Also, last but not least, you will not believe how time flies, but next board meeting, we start our school annual reports already. So be prepared to be wowed by our principals and our leadership staff by their annual reports. And unless I'm missing something, Mr. Sample, Dr. McCormick, unless I'm missing something, okay. That is the superintendent's update, Madam President.
I don't see how you could be missing anything. You've done a lot.
That's
Board
only
members.
2 weeks. That's only 2 weeks.
Board members, any comments, any statements or questions from any of the board members? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you so much for recognizing the EdCal and my retirement. I had asked if Melissa would send out that copy of the EdCal to the board members, and she said she would. She and Mr. Sample. So thank you again for highlighting that information. And thank you again and again and again for all of the work that you're doing and keeping GCC in the front of what's happening statewide. We really appreciate your involvement in all of the activities of the state and schools. So we really appreciate that recognition from you. Anything else from the board members for the superintendent's report? Hearing none, seeing none, then we will go into our study session. And the very first one is the school reopening update, as we have gotten at every board meeting. So item 1, school reopening update. Madam Superintendent, is that Mr. Sample?
That will be
Dr.
Mr.
McCormick?
Sample will be the point on that, Mr.
Okay,
Sample.
great.
All right. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Peterson, members of the board. Thank you so much. Dr. McCormick and I are happy once again to just kind of take you briefly through our school reopening update. I will tell you, it's almost like a TV show. Wait to the end. We have some exciting news to share with you, but just wait to the end. All right, next slide. So the first thing that we just kind of want to share with you, Dr. Peterson talked about this a little bit in her report, is Sacramento County remains in the red, Yolo County remains in the orange. However, the governor made the big proclamation that the color tier system will sunset June 15, 2021. And I have a ... to be continued, because then we'll learn what's next. If nothing more has taught us this past year, is that this is a very fluid situation, and but we're really excited to come this far. In terms of, next slide, what we're doing in terms of our vaccine rollout and support within the GCC, we continue to share information with our staff, but now we've actually moved not only to share the information with our staff, but also our families. You may have heard in the news recently that vaccination appointments have actually gone all the way down to youth age 16. So we have begun to share that information with all of our families, again, because we see our role as a GCC not only as an educational leader, but as a community leader, one that can provide those critical resources to our community at large, because we care. So we've been utilizing our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, to share this community health information widely. Our own director of school and parent and governmental relations, Mr. Sergey Terekov, recently has been working with the Fisher Radio to share the information widely within the Slavic community, also partnering with local Slavic health providers so that we can educate our community. And then finally, we are continue to partner with our authorizers, SCOE, our Sacramento County Office of Education, Yolo County Office, Yolo County Public Health, Sacramento County Public Health, to again get the vaccine into the arms of our community, again, because we see that as part of our role. Okay, next slide. So with this, schools are open. Dr. McCormick.
I'm excited to share these photos with you, and excited to say that we are open across the board, every school in the GCC 5 days a week for in-person learning. And with that, just absolute affirmations to our schools and their teams. When we came to them as a cabinet and said, so by the way, your next step is to figure out how to open 5 days a week, they just dug in and made it happen. So very excited to share these photos with you. It's exciting to hear students on campus and continue to move forward to have more and more students attend. So with that said, just a quick update on the percentage of our students that are attending 5 days a week, continuing to, work with our families, work with our students, especially our high school students who I know you're not surprised, they're perfectly fine sort of staying in this distance learning model, but having our schools really identify those students that really need that direct support and continuing to encourage them to come back on campus. These numbers we're updating for you. Melissa shares those with you. Our schools report every other week, because I also have to take all that information and report it to the department, the public health department, because it's part of a public website now that parents can go and view how schools and what the school status is. So with that said, that website, based on our numbers, identifies our status. So I don't want you to be surprised if you went there and noticed our high schools will say that they are in distance learning. That's completely based on the number of students that are coming to school every day. But we're continuing to work with them to move that number. Mr. Thornsberry is going to speak with you in a few moments about the fiscal opportunities we have, but one of the primary components that you'll hear from me again on, we're in the process of developing our early learning opportunities grant plans. These grants are automatically funded to us, but we do have to align our resources and bring a plan to you to be approved by June 1st. And these are just some of the areas that schools can look at to spend those funds. So Mr. Thornsberry and I have been working with the schools in their budget meetings to start to talk about what the elements in those early learning opportunities grants and how we'll go ahead and put that plan together for you. So I will be back in the future to bring those to you for you to review. Jason, do you want me to put in the drum roll or?
Yeah, I guess so. Go ahead.
You can do this one.
All right. So as you know, over the course of the last 9, 10, 12 months, we have been labeling this item on our board agenda as school reopening. Well, our schools are reopening, so we'll be transitioning this agenda item to be in-person instruction update as we all begin to look at what's next for our students and our families. So we're really excited to share that because we're open and we're serving students. With that being said, we're more than happy to take any questions you may have.
Board members? Do I see any hands? Any questions? Comments?
I have a question. I'm not a board member, but
Okay.
Dr. McCormick, it is really obvious that all the high schools are abundantly lower in percentage than our other schools. Do you find that that's true across the rest of the state in terms of differences between elementary, middle, and high school? Is that
Yes.
pretty standard?
Yeah, I would say that's a fairly consistent statistic. And I think the learning statewide, when I talked to some of my statewide partners, is that it was an easier transition for our older students, and many of them have gone to work or also, as schools are reopening, are still watching other siblings because there's the school their younger siblings may attend may not be reopened. But I'm hoping as more and more of our schools around us reopen and we begin to start to see longer school days on some campuses, we'll start to see that number increase.
And certainly I would believe that you're having, you and Heather and Eric are having deep conversations with those principals about what kinds of engagements they can create that might help drive that. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And helping our students and families know we are back. We're here and we want to help your student, and then really working with all of the high school teams about starting to look at their data and having some very specific outreach using a lot of their student support specialists, their counselors and social workers. We want to make sure we're re-engaging all of our students, and all of them have a worry that some may have fallen through the cracks. So continuing to be very focused on that support as well.
Mark, and then Jack.
Yes.
I'm
I'm sorry.
Mark, yeah, and then Jack.
Christine, what's been the feedback that we've gotten from parents so far regarding our reopening?
They're excited. I would say probably overall the fact that we're reopening with a fairly normal school day. So our students are coming for the most part from about 8:30 or 9 o'clock till 2 or 2:30. Some of our neighboring districts don't have as broad of a school day. So that's allowed our parents to be able to return to work and to also be able to start to move in as much as we can say our new normal might be. So I would say our parents are happy to see us back, as happy as the teachers are. I think you'll hear teachers say they were really anxious about it, but now that they're back up and running, it's a nice place to be.
Good. I'd also think that the parents now have a greater appreciation for what the teachers have to do to teach children.
I would say that is also correct.
Jack?
Yes, to kind of give a testimonial, my junior high school grandson and my high school granddaughter, it seems to be that the sports activities at both junior high school and high school seem to be a big attraction. If I'm not sure to what extent we've been able to bring back any sort of those activities, but it seems to be one of the motivators to get them back on campus.
And Jack, I agree with you. High schools are having problems. I know personally speaking, my grandson is at Hollywood High School and he's going to sit out the rest of the year doing virtual because he said they're only going to be there a couple of hours a day or so. And he'd just rather do it at home instead of trying to get there. And so the high schools are having problems trying to figure out what they're doing to educate the students.
But my concern is that they don't know what the isolation is doing to them.
Yeah.
And they don't understand how important the socialization aspect of the high school experience is, training them for life. You know, you're not going to be able to just sit in front of a computer, and they're never going to get to come back and redo this experience in terms of, you know, having these more socialized. Plus, what we feel like is things like equity and cultural competence and open-mindedness are better taught in the classroom sometimes than in some of our homes. And, you know, so we're also kind of getting some of that. So I certainly have many reasons, Jack, that we'll be looking at whether it's sports or other things. The hard part is we only actually have, I think, 5 weeks of school left. I know that's hard to imagine, but we only have 5 weeks of school left. But one of the things that I said as an idea to Jason just a few weeks ago was, even in the K-8s, there's nothing that stops us from having every Friday be field day. You know, there is absolutely nothing that stops us from having every Friday be field day. Kids love field day. Kids love to go out. It's just that we have to get our mindset out of, oh, we've got so much academics that we got to catch up. Yes, we do. And we're not going to catch them up in the next 5 weeks. And we're certainly not going to catch them up if we're not engaging the students to want to come back for a much broader experience. So I know that Dr. McCormick and Mr. Sample, Heather and others, and certainly the principals, they're all having these conversations. So.
And thank you for looking at other things that will enhance their coming back. You know, the Fields Day is one that we did a lot of, and it was very popular for students. So that's a good avenue. Thank you for looking at that. Anything else for that particular item? Seeing and hearing none, we will move to the next one. Item 2, COVID-19 funds update. And I guess, Mr. Aaron, that is yours.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna let him talk about money since he keeps saying he's rolling in COVID-19 money.
Well, you can roll some this way.
Good afternoon, President Campbell, members of the board, Superintendent Peterson. I will be presenting our COVID update on our COVID relief grants. And if you just give me 1 minute, I will bring that up on the screen here. Okay, can everyone see that? Great, okay. So first grant we are receiving, or that's new, that's coming down from the state of California, that Dr. McCormick mentioned, was the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. $4.6 billion is going out statewide based on the proportion of LCFF funding for each district and charter school. And then we're getting an extra $1,000 for each homeless student that we have enrolled. And its allowable uses are extended instructional learning time, learning recovery, student supports to address barriers to learning, community learning hubs, supports for credit deficient students, additional academic services, and professional development. Some additional considerations for the grant is that we have to have a plan for the use of the grant funds for each of our charter schools adopted by the board by June 1st. So we'll be bringing that to the board, the board meeting just before June 1st. 85% of the funds must be used for in-person services, and at least 10% of the grant must be used to hire paraprofessionals. And we can actually use them for existing paraprofessionals that are providing additional classroom support as well. So either or on that one. And that can be used, the paraprofessional requirement can be used to meet the 85% requirement for in-person services. We have until August 31st, 2022 to spend these funds. And we have a report of final expenditures due to CDE by 12/1/22. So this slide shows the amount that each of our charters are receiving for this grant, for a total of almost $3.9 million. The second grant that was just recently passed by the state is the in-person instruction grant. This one's a little smaller. It's $2 billion was allocated statewide. Independent study charters are not eligible for this grant, unfortunately. The allowable uses of the grant are any purpose consistent with providing in-person instruction. And you can see the different bullet points there, from COVID-19 testing and cleaning, disinfection, PPE, ventilation. There's salaries for employees providing in-person instruction or services where this is probably where we're going to be using this grant for, because with all of our schools being back, and we have now in-person staff doing in-person instruction, we'll be allocating salaries to this grant. Some additional considerations for the grant is that we must offer in-person instruction by April 1st, and which we have done. Well, we had actually, excuse me, let me back up on that one. We had spring break over, which is exempted from this. They consider your existing school calendar. And we had a few schools that did start a little bit later because they were still unfortunately off on Friday and had to get their staff and everything back. So the grant is reduced 1% each day until in-person instruction is offered to all required students. And it's forfeited if in-person instruction was not met by 5/15/21. So everybody is open now, and we are going to receive almost all of this grant. The certification to CDE, a certification must be met and made and sent to CDE by June 1st, that we're complying with the grant requirements. The expenditure deadline is August 31st, 2022 also, and there is a final report by December 1st, 2022. So with the in-person instruction grant, this is how much we are estimating all of our schools to receive. And you notice the independent study charters are not receiving any. And so it's a total of $1.25 million. Wanted to update you on the federal side. We now have another ESSER, or we call ESSER grant, coming down. That was part of the just passed in March, the American Rescue Plan Act. ESSER 3 is expected to be 2.22 times the size of the ESSER 2 grant. So $15.1 billion was allocated to California from the federal government, and 13.6 billion of that is being distributed out to all districts and charters in proportion to the amount of their Title I grants that we are receiving 2020, 2021. The deadline for this grant is out to September 30th of 2024, and 20% of it must be used for learning loss mitigation activities. It's a very large grant. So the estimated award amounts are shown here for each of our schools. One of the interesting things, and we'll see if this maybe gets somehow, I don't know if there will be a correction made. We're going to look closely at this because SAVA the original SAVA here is expected to receive, based on what they have been allocated on ESSER 2, $1.3 million, which is a little disproportionate to the size of their school, being only 150 students, but they are going back, from the original SAVA that was a large enrollment. And so that's why that one you may notice is a little bit large for their school. But it's we're estimating a total of $11.6 million from the ESSER 3 grant for all of GCC. The ESSER 3 allowable uses are very broad, but we do have to be careful that it does match the allowable uses, and it's really any activity authorized by the Elementary Secondary Education Act, which is all of our title grants. So anything that's in alignment to our title grants, IDEA special education, any activity authorized by that. So that could help fund some of our special education. We don't have adult ed, so we don't worry about that. And then any activity authorized by Carl Perkins, so for CTE. In a lot of the same language that was in the previous ESSER grants about, responding to coronavirus. There's activities to address unique needs of our students and children of disabilities, low income, homelessness, foster youth, racial and ethnic minorities, developing procedures and systems to improve our response to coronavirus, training and prevent PD for staff on sanitation and minimizing disease, supplies to sanitize and clean the facility. We have the IDEA, meals to eligible students, so we can use this for technology for online learning, purchasing technology, see number 11, mental health services, and number 12 here, 13, planning for learning loss mitigation for after school programs, so we can use this for after school programs in summer months and additional learning time. 14 is more about learning loss. 15, we have school facility repairs and improvements to reduce the risk of virus transmission. And other facility here, number 16, about ventilation and systems. And just other activities here on 17 and 18. So just some consideration and next steps for these grants. So this is a very significant amount of one-time funding with varying restrictions on their uses. So once funding ends, though, going out to the year 2024, there's going to be a significant funding cliff from this. And so we just need to make special consideration and be cautious that we're not going to use these funds to fund ongoing commitments that we cannot meet beyond 2024. And then our next steps are to right now we're currently meeting with the principals, developing plans on how to use these funds and incorporating them into next year's budget. And we'll be submitting the plan for the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant just before June 1st for you. Any questions?
Very good.
I have one.
You have one? Okay, Mr. Block, I thought that was you, yes.
Is any of this money going to be used for extracurricular activities such as sports, golf? Because golf is the most socially distant sports out there. So I was trying to.
Right now, I think we need to look at whether or not that would be an allowable use of the funding. That's one of the areas that hard to tell whether that, that is an activity. Is that mitigating learning loss? There's a lot of gray areas in this grant.
Yeah, let me add, I understand what you're saying, Director Block, and certainly we will always be looking at creative ways to engage students. But one, it does have to meet every auditing requirement and they are strict. Two, it has to be what the principal wants and believes is highest priority for their campus. And three, they have to be able to afford it. But and it can't compete with other, maybe more pressing priorities such as math instruction, English learners, special education. We have a lot of things. It is not that we're ruling it out. If a principal were to ask for it and make a justification for it, and if Aaron could talk to the auditors about how it might be able to be funded, then it would be considered.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I consider social skills as one of the most important things kids need than anything else, where they can communicate with each other.
Yeah, and one of the other things too, there are no supplanting provisions in these grants. So one of the things is if we were able to free up unrestricted funds from some of these items, that allows for some additional unrestricted dollars, maybe for the purpose of sports or things, if it can't fit into the Sr3 allowability.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mark, Ms. Anderson, and then
okay, Aaron, obviously we have a lot of focus on social distancing, extra cleaning, all of that. I'm assuming some of these dollars are allocated to those types of extraordinary expenses. And with the sunsetting of some of these grant monies in 2022, of course, we don't have a crystal ball to know how long we're going to continue to have to do these extraordinary things. How do we factor that in just as kind of a long-term versus just a short-term expense?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, some of these costs may be ongoing. We just don't really know at this point. And, I think that we have to just do the best we can to assess that, in a couple of years and, adjust for that. And hopefully, a lot of these requirements, the pandemic will be over. There'll be more vaccinations and reaching herd immunity and things. Yeah, we don't have.
Though, Mark, one of the things that I would certainly say is true is we are looking for how do we invest this money in expenditures that stand the test of time whenever possible. Mm-hmm. So that means if some of this allows us to upgrade HVAC systems, that would serve our schools, whether or not we're putting in specific filters around COVID. So I think Mr. Business is very cognizant, as are the principals, that it's not just how do I spend quick to say I'm meeting today's moment, but how might I both meet today's moment and create more sustained excellence.
Good point.
Zach, Mr. Turner.
Yes, and just a couple of points. One is I marvel at the number of California school districts that have not planning to open for the rest of the spring semester. And secondly, in looking at that bullet points of what was allowable under these grants, the final one, which is anything really that seems to promote mitigation of learning loss or activities, that's a very, very broad freeway. I've been there before, and that really gives the principals and however you do it a lot of flexibility in utilizing these funds. And my other concern only is, although I'm really supportive of using the funds for staffing and so forth, it is one-time money, and I've been there before. And when the grants run out, it's really hard to back off what you've done if we put it into staff and so forth. But again, I'm somewhat supportive of that. If there is some way of doing it that will not have a negative impact in a year or two.
And I think that was one of the things that said, look at long-range planning, not utilizing, because we have been in that situation where we got a huge pot of money and we start putting in personnel and what have you. And school districts really were crying because 2 or 3 years later, they still had that obligation. So it's critical to look at the utilization of the funding to make sure that it's not ongoing.
And we will be spending, Jack, some of this money on positions. We will, because positions and people, as we know, have the greatest impact on students and their outcomes. My discussion with Aaron and with the sites is, as long as when we are hiring these people, we tell them it is with X funds that have X life. We may or may not be able to afford you after X funds go away. As long as a person knows that when they're hired, I just want there to be transparency with people. Like one of the priorities that we have really talked about is more social workers in this time of trauma, more needs, more family needs. How can we help? But if we're going to fund them with those special COVID dollars and they have a lifespan, then the principal has to be told that lifespan. The person who's being hired has to know that lifespan. And certainly, if we have the money at the end, great. But no promises are made after the lifespan of the special funds. And that's hard, as you said, Jack, because again, it becomes a sense of, I don't want to say entitlement, but like, you just come to expect I have that position. Yeah. But I'm not willing to not hire, as an example, social workers, just because it will be hard to let them go if we don't have the funding.
Jack, I saw your hand again.
Yes, I appreciate the sensitivity because I've, over the years, have handled a number of categorical funding programs. Yeah. And I think we're all aware that the need is there. I wish the funding would go on. And I think your idea of certainly specialized outreach and work with social needs and learning needs of students is really very, very valuable. So yes, I would support that. And I'm not sure truly how you build that in because they become part of the Gateway community family. But absolutely, I certainly would support it. And the funds needed to be used. And so I certainly want to see the funds used.
All right, if there's nothing else, we shall move on to our next study item, which is California Assessment Update. And I think it's Dr. McCormick and Ms. Gold. So who you want to bring that in, Dr. McCormick?
I will be happy to. So I'm happy to have Heather Gold with us this evening, our Director of Academics. You probably have heard plenty in the news about all that's going on with the assessments and how we're going to do that. So I'm going to let Heather share all those details with you and give you an update on how our schools will move forward with their assessment model for this school year.
Great, thank you, Dr. McCormick. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is everyone able to see that?
Not yet.
How about now?
Okay. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. McCormick, Madam President, and board members. I'm excited today to talk with you and give you an update on our state assessments. Now, normally, you wouldn't usually put excited and state assessments in the same sentence. However, COVID has brought on a lot of changes with state assessments, and every day, just similar to our schools having to change every moment to meet the COVID needs, it was similar for state assessments. And we were constantly in this flex state of not knowing what was going to happen and what our requirements were going to be. And so I first really want to affirm our site principals and especially our site testing coordinators, because they have been extraordinary through this process. They have been so flexible, so understanding, and also our teachers. We were changing things on them. They were setting school plans, having to go through very thorough training, not knowing what was going to happen. So I just could not stop without first giving my thanks to their support. Now to just give you a little update Background information is on April 2nd, California finally received approval from the U.S. Department of Education, which allowed us to have more flexibility this spring with standardized testing. Now, though the federal government told states that they were not going to allow waivers to not give some sort of state assessment, they did provide a clause that said to allow some states more flexibility. And California went ahead and leveraged this because, as you all know, we were one of the most affected states, and we're just now getting back some of our students on campus. So we asked for that extra flexibility. On April 2nd, we received that extra flexibility. And what that flexibility said, though, was, of course, it wasn't black and white. There were many shades of gray, and it was really based off of each LEA and on viability, on whether or not we are able to administer the SBAC, or if we can administer a Common Core aligned state approved assessment. Now, what viability was, there was a lot of questions. Well, what does viability mean? That's pretty vague. And so we finally were able to receive some considerations, and this is not exhaustive, but just to give all of you an idea, some of them were really asking us to consider the degree of the child's experience with online assessment platforms. So for our third graders, they've never seen this online platform, and it's quite comprehensive and unique and takes a lot of practice. In addition, they really wanted LEAs to consider the amount of time that students have actually been in full person instruction, not wanting students to be tested if they haven't been on campus full time for at least 3 to 4 weeks. So we really wanted to balance. Yes, we have a commitment to make sure that we are measuring student learning, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're balancing that with the social emotional needs of our students because of the anxiety around state testing, as well as what is our capacity to be able to proctor and monitor state testing while you have some of your students in person, but you still have many of your students who are at home. So that's a little bit of background on where this came from. And so to talk about the alternative assessment requirements, well, would our LEAs be able to meet this requirement? So it states that if we were to choose as an LEA or feel that it's most viable to give an alternative assessment, it has to meet the SBE adopted criteria, which means that it has to be California Common Core standards aligned for both ELA and mathematics. And for us, that is our Renaissance Universal Screener that we already give for reauthorization as well as driving instruction. And we give that 3 times a year. Additionally, we had to be able to give it to all grades that are assessed. So that's 3rd through 8th grade and then 11th grade in high school. And then additionally, we needed to make sure that we were able to produce and provide families with the data so they know where their students are at, as well as be able to provide this to the public, which we would do that through our SARC. And the last thing is more of a GCC commitment was really, we wanted to make sure that if we were to give an alternative assessment, that we were going to do our best to test as many of our students so that we really had an understanding of where they were so we can help with summer school, but mitigating that learning loss come fall. So when we did this, I had a lot of discussion, really in depth with our site principals. They all had voice. They all went back, they talked to their teachers really to see what is viable for their students and what is best for their students in doing this. And so you will see here what our school site plans are. For the majority of our sites, you will see that they have felt that it is most viable to give our alternative assessment, which is Renaissance Math Reading for 3rd through 8th grade, as well as 11th grade for our sites who support 11th. And this is primarily because they're already used to taking this assessment. They have given it online. It is Common Core aligned, and it will give us good measurable growth without having to increase anxiety. When we look at 11th grade, though, you'll see for futures, however, that they are testing in ELA and in math. And the reason for that is, though we were given flexibility on either giving SBAC or an alternative assessment, the state of California did not provide any grace this year on the seal of biliteracy or EAP for CSU admissions. So that means if we were not to provide this assessment to our 11th grade students, we would be excluding them from those opportunities. So when our sites really contemplated that, we felt that it was in the best interest of our students to be able to afford them those opportunities moving forward. So our futures will be testing. And then LPAC, which is our English language proficiency examination for our English language learners. There was no flexibility on that assessment. So we have been administering since February, and we are making great progress on that assessment. And then in addition, CAST, which is our science test, which grades are only tested in 5th, 8th, and 11th grade. We will not be administering that assessment due to saturation. It's just way too many assessments in a small amount of time. However, there is no accountability that is tied to that, nor are there any CSU or college admissions tied to that. And then you will see to our right our 95% plan of how we're going to ensure that we are capturing as much data as we can with our students with these alternative assessments. So finally, so what does this mean for accountability, right? At the end of the day, yes, we really want this to drive our instructions, to know where our students are, but we're also held to accountability. And so the state said that we will not be there's not going to be a formal process, rather, of letting them know what our plan is. They're really leaving that up to the LEAs. We will just document our documentation of why it is or is not viable to give some of these assessments. Additionally, one of the requirements is we have to make sure that we provide this data to parents and families immediately. So we are able to generate a parent report. It's a very friendly parent report from Renaissance that we will be providing our families. In addition, we will be reporting and disaggregating our data for public and our SARCs, which are due by February 1st. And then this academic process also will not be reflected on our dashboard similar to this year. Our dashboard will do suspensions, graduation rates, and attendance like this year. So nothing, we have been given grace for the accountability. And so that concludes my update on state assessments. Do I have any questions? I know that was a lot of information in a brief amount of time.
Okay, all right, Mr. Turner.
Yes, Heather, thank you, because I was wondering what the state was really going to do on the assessments. Just another question, on the SATs and the ACTs for our graduating seniors, do you know what the state is planning, or the CSU or the UC system is using for those students who are planning, who want to go to a four-year state university or college?
You know, great question. I will have to follow up with you on where that stands at this moment, unless Dr. McCormick knows, because it has gone back and forth. The last was it was not doing them because they did not feel that they could give it in a way that did not ruin the validity of the assessment. So they were just relying on grades. With that said, anything can change between now and the end of the year.
I appreciate it. If you could just get back to me, I would be interested in how the state plans, or how the universities plan to use that.
Yes.
Dr. McCormick, did you?
No, I was just going to confirm what Heather had already shared. We'll have to do some research on that. It has gone back and forth several times.
Yeah, I heard the same thing that Heather heard, that they weren't going to use it this year, but who knows what's really going to happen. Thank you, Heather, for that information. I think you've answered a lot of the questions even I had, because I wasn't sure what the assessment was going to look like this year. As a matter of fact, I think I mentioned to Jason or to Dr. Peterson what is going to look like when the principals do their reports. So the Renaissance part is really kind of good to see that that's what we're going to be using. So
yeah, that is correct, and that is in line with many of our authorizers as well, who
right.
Was able to get in contact with are also using alternative assessments.
Yeah, so glad to see that. Anything else, board members? Any other questions? Thank you so much for that report. You have really given us what we needed to have. So thank you. Anything else on assessment? All right, seeing no other hands, then we're moving on to consent agenda items. And the consent agenda items are 5: adoption of the board meeting of March 23rd, personnel consent agenda, purchases over $30,000, second amendment to facilities use agreement with San Juan School District, and memorandum of understanding with San Juan Unified School District for GIS. So I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda in a second and then discussion.
So move.
Shall move, Mr. Block. Second, Mr. Mandrick. You still muted, but I saw your hand. So, any discussion on any of the consent agenda items? Any questions or yes, Mr. Anderson?
On the San Juan agreement that we're doing, what is going on with the church across the street? Are we continuing that agreement with them, or is that going away?
That's good planning. We're planning on going away from that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from board members on the consent agenda item? Hearing none. Roll call. Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Block,
Yay.
Mr. Mandrick,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Campbell, yes. So all of the consent agenda items have been approved as written. Thank you very much. And now we are moving into personnel items. And the personnel items, we will start with number 1. And what we will do is take them individually because they're all different. So we will take them, and if you have questions, then we will address these questions. On the first one is job description, data accountability technician revised. So I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Any other discussions, questions, comments on that item? Hearing and seeing none. Roll call. Mr. Anderson on item 1.
Yes.
Mr. Block,
Yes.
Mr. Mandrick,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Campbell, yes. Item number 1, job description has been approved. Item 2, job description, Director of CTE and Special Projects, and that's one we heard of last board meeting. So now it's coming back for approval, and you have had the information. So, job description, Director of CTE and Special Projects. I will entertain a motion in a second. I have a motion for approval. Okay, Mr. Block approved the motion.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mandrick. Any discussion on that item? Questions, discussion, anything at all? Seeing and hearing none, we will roll call. Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Block,
Yes.
Mr. Mandrick,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Campbell, yes. Item number 2, job description of Director of CTA and Special Projects has been approved. Now, item 3, job description, Director of IB Programs and Special Projects. And we also had a discussion on that in our closed session. So it is not coming back for a vote. All right, may I have yes.
So moved.
So
Second.
moved. And second, Mr. Turner. Any other discussion, questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Mark.
Just a question in regards to the position. Are we still exploring the IB high school, and would that be part of this? The director's responsibility is to explore that?
Yes, and
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, and yes. Any other questions, comments? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor, Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Block,
Yes.
Mr. Mandrick,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Campbell, yes. That item has been approved unanimously. And the last one is revised salary schedule. You got that in your board backup, and so I will entertain a motion for that.
So move.
So move, Mr. Block.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mandrick. All right. Any other discussions, questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Turner.
Just a question on extending the janitorial days of work. Are we planning to keep the schools open a longer time? I was a little unclear on that.
No, it's that every year the principals actually have been putting the custodians on what we call a path for extra work, that it just merely takes that many days to get the campus prepared. There's putting away new orders, there's always fixing, cleaning, getting ready, and and moving, teachers between. There's just so much work that the principals feel they need these days just to get their campuses ready.
Okay, I support that.
Okay. Any other questions on that item? Revised salary schedule and the custodians in that. Okay. Hearing none, roll call. Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Block,
Yes.
Mr. Mandrick,
Yes.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Campbell, yes. So that item has been unanimously approved. And so that concludes our personnel items and our consent agenda items. And we're down to board comments. So we're open. Yes, Mr. Turner.
Lily, I want to congratulate you on your second retirement. And does AXA have a defined benefit program when you retire?
No, they just kick you out and say goodbye and thank you. No,
You don't even get a gold watch, huh?
but I did get a beautiful plaque. I should have brought that in to show you. It was okay.
When you left the presidency of AXA, they gave you a lifetime membership, right?
Yeah, I have a lifetime membership.
She's forever a member. What else could they give her? She's forever a member.
Yeah,
But I did get a
perpetual.
beautiful plaque. In the next board meeting, I will try to remember to take it off my wall and show it to you.
Thank
But it was, I have gotten so many wonderful comments from so many different people that it made me feel that I did make some kind of contribution. So
Thank you for
very
your
grateful for
commitment. Thank you for your commitment to education, Lily.
that. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
And you continue to make an impact here. So
And I will be
appreciate
here
that.
until you kick me out. So soon. So thank you guys. Yes, Harry.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, I picked up my grandson last week at GIS, and I took a little peep in to look at the building, and look at the inside. It's beautiful over there now. It's so beautiful. Everything looks so great. So just to let you know.
So you did take a little sneak peek, huh?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I sure
I can't
did.
wait. I can't wait. When they tell me I can go, I'm just gonna go from school to school to school. Just anxious.
So,
But yes.
so I have a loaded question, Cindy. When do you, Dr. Peterson, when do you think we are all going to be able to physically go back to our board meetings?
I don't think it will happen in the next even 3 months even. I don't think it's in the next 3 months. I think if we're lucky, it's about 6 months. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I would agree. I think a number of the public meetings, not only at our level, but all the way up through city council, county supervisors are still being held virtually. And I envision that's going to be for another few months.
I know that the FICMAT board definitely said their next meeting, which they meet quarterly, their next meeting is Zoom. They've already decided it. And then the one after, they're tentatively trying to do in person. So that pretty much makes a 6-month mark. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking maybe 6 months, but we'll have to watch and see.
And I know they're tired of me asking that every time I see Jason, when can I come back, and whining and begging. So when it is, I'll definitely let you know, because I have been asking that same question, when?
Well, we all feel the same way, and that is, thank goodness we have this tool to be relational with one another, but we miss you. We miss having you in our GCC offices. We miss having you on our sites. We miss, what we may never get to do again, which is shake hands or give hugs. And we miss all that. So just like you, we're missing it. So, if we could answer your begging by also giving us our own heart's desire, we would do the same.
Yeah, I'm Mr.
Hey.
Baby Ruth.
You just missed the candy. Oatmeal raisin cookies. We got to train Melissa which kind of candy people like.
That's right, Melissa. I don't have my Snickers in front of me.
She can send out a list, and then we could kind of just write in what we prefer.
There we go. We'll get the write-in going. She's
Yes.
already taking notes. Okay, let me see what
She's
kind.
doing a great job. She really is.
Oh, I guess
Oh,
she was
look-
left
there you
the
go.
list. There you go. She
All
knows. At
right.
least she knows what she used to want for chocolate, unless it's changed in the pandemic.
Yeah, and even when we hear the board reports, you know how they bring us candy and tea and all of that, we're gonna miss that too, guys. So when we hear the school reports, that is. But anyway,
You'll just have to feel it, right? Feel it as if
we'll
it's
just keep
there.
waiting and hoping. All right, anything else for the board comments? Announcement of our next board meeting. It's not on my sheet when it's May the something,
Madam President, it's May 11th.
May 11th.
Mhm.
Okay. May 11th, everyone, put it down. Okay. I will be out of the area for a couple of days. Next week, we're going to Southern California to visit the kids. So if you need anything, get to me before that. We'll only be gone 3 days, so 3 or 4 days.
Well,
Anything else?
I am sure that Mr. Mandrick can step in during those days. So
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mandy.
I will be in town.
You will be in town. Good. Very good. Anything else for the good of the organization? Thank all of you so much for all of your reports tonight. Thank you, Ms. Gold, for being with us this evening. We appreciate all the information, and as usual, from all of the cabinet members. And for those of you who are watching us online, thank you, and we ask that you have a safe and healthy week coming up until we meet again on May the 11th. So with that, I will entertain a motion for the adjournment. Yes,
Move.
so move. May I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Turner, second. So all in favor of the adjourning, I will not do the roll call, the voting sign of aye.
Right.
Aye.